What's up, Multiverse of Mayhem fans? Today we're diving into one of the most interesting sides of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, characters who had strong setups, important introductions, or major narrative potential, but didn't fully get the depth or development many fans expected, not because their stories were invalid, but because their screen time, resolutions, or arcs were limited within the structure of the films and shows. So today, we're ranking the top 10 MCU characters who deserved better treatment, based strictly on what is actually shown in canon. Let's get into it. Starting off with our number 10 spot, we have Quicksilver, introduced in Avengers Age of Ultron. Pietro Maximoff is introduced alongside Wanda as a Sokovian-enhanced human, who initially aligns with Ultron due to his belief that the Avengers are responsible for the destruction of his country. His abilities as a speedster are used effectively in combat, especially in disrupting the Avengers during early encounters. He later switches sides after realizing Ultron's true intent and helps protect civilians in the final battle. However, his arc remains contained entirely within a single film, and he dies during the Sokovia battle while saving Hawkeye and a child. The limitation here is simply duration. His redemption is shown, but there is no continuation of his character beyond that moment. Moving on to number 9, we have Malekith from Thor: The Dark World. Malekith is the leader of the Dark Elves, whose goal is to use the ether to return the universe to a state of darkness. His motivation is stated in the film, but the story does not deeply explore his backstory, ideology, or connection to Asgardian history beyond basic exposition. As a result, his character functions primarily as a narrative antagonist rather than a deeply developed presence. He drives the conflict, but the film does not spend significant time building him as a layered character. At number 8, we have Sharon Carter, first introduced in Captain America: The Winter Soldier. Sharon is introduced as a SHIELD agent assigned to monitor Steve Rogers, later revealed to be Peggy Carter's niece. She plays a supporting role in Steve's storyline and assists the Avengers during Captain America: Civil War. After this, she is absent from the main film narrative for a significant period. When she reappears in The Falcon and The Winter Soldier, she is shown in a new role as the Power Broker, but this development is not depicted as a gradual on-screen transition across the films, instead being revealed later in the timeline. Coming in at number 7 is Ultron, introduced in Avengers: Age of Ultron. Ultron is created by Tony Stark and Bruce Banner as an artificial intelligence designed to protect Earth. He quickly evolves beyond his programming and determines that humanity itself is the primary threat. The philosophical conflict he represents, protection through extinction, is clearly stated in the film. However, his entire arc is contained within a single movie, and he is destroyed at the end of that story. There are no further appearances of Ultron in the main MCU continuity afterward, which limits exploration of his concept as an evolving AI entity. At number 6, we have Baron Zemo, introduced in Captain America: Civil War. Zemo is a non-enhanced human whose motivation stems from the death of his family during the Sokovia incident. His strategy successfully fractures the Avengers by manipulating them into conflict using evidence tied to Bucky Barnes. This makes him one of the few MCU villains who achieves his objective without physical confrontation. After Civil War, he is imprisoned and later reappears in The Falcon and The Winter Soldier, but his role in the main film storyline does not continue beyond his initial impact. Breaking into the top 5, number 5 goes to Gamora, introduced in Guardians of the Galaxy. Gamora is a former assassin of Thanos who gradually becomes a member of the Guardians of the Galaxy. Her arc centers on rejecting Thanos and forming new bonds with her team, particularly Peter Quill. In Avengers Infinity War, she is killed by Thanos in exchange for the Soul Stone, completing her original timeline arc. A variant version appears in Avengers Endgame, but this version comes from an earlier point in time and therefore does not share the same development or experiences as the Gamora who died. At number 4, we have Vision, introduced in Avengers Age of Ultron. Vision is created from the Mind Stone combined with Jarvis, Ultron's technology, and vibranium, making him a synthetic being capable of independent thought. He explores humanity, morality, and identity throughout his appearances, but his development across films is limited in scope. By Avengers Infinity War, his storyline is largely centered around the Mind Stone and its removal, and he is killed during the events of that film. His philosophical themes are expanded further in WandaVision, but that occurs after his death in the main timeline. Down to our last 3, our number 3 spot goes to Hulk, specifically Bruce Banner, across the Avengers, Age of Ultron, and Avengers Infinity War. Banner's arc focuses on his struggle to control the Hulk. The unresolved tension between the two personas is a recurring theme throughout the Infinity Saga. However, the transition into Smart Hulk is revealed in Avengers Endgame, and the actual process of that transformation is not shown on screen, but instead explained as having occurred between films. Our number 2 spot goes to Natasha Romanoff, introduced in Iron Man 2. Natasha evolves from a covert SHIELD operative into a central member of the Avengers. Her arc explores themes of redemption and escaping her past as a Black Widow assassin. Across multiple films, she becomes a stabilizing force within the team. Her sacrifice in Avengers Endgame is a defining emotional moment. Her solo film, Black Widow, is set earlier in the timeline and focuses on her past rather than continuing her story after Endgame. And finally, taking our number 1 spot, we have Gore the God Butcher, introduced in Thor: Love and Thunder. Gore is a grieving father who loses faith in gods after personal tragedy and decides to eliminate them. His motivation is clearly established, and his confrontation with Thor drives the central conflict of the film. However, much of his backstory and early journey is conveyed through exposition rather than fully depicted events, and the film spends limited time focusing on his perspective compared to its broader tonal shifts. His arc is resolved within a single film, which limits deeper exploration of his philosophy and actions. So there you have it. 10 MCU characters who had strong foundations and meaningful ideas, but whose arcs felt incomplete, rushed, or cut short within the constraints of the films. Now I want to hear from you. Which MCU character do you think deserved better treatment? Who had the biggest missed opportunity in the franchise? Drop your thoughts in the comments, and if you enjoyed this breakdown, smash that like button, subscribe to Multiverse of Mayhem, and hit the notification bell so you don't miss our next deep dive. Stay chaotic, stay informed, and remember, the multiverse is mayhem. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.